story. I looked to Danny, so it is over? I asked, meaning all the confusion everyone seemed to be in. For now, however, it has just begun. Once Emmett returns from the mountain with the scepter, he will be the Millennium High Priest. The Saltarn Circle becomes... There are so few of us with the Millennium Circle. However, the Saltarn Circle becomes the Millennium Circle. Scott, Mike, and I become the personal guards to Emmett. There are to be 12 members of that circle, all males. He looked to Tony. Guess what, pal? He laughed. Emmett returns and I am an officer of that circle. Tony asked. You are a damn good guesser, Danny laughed. Emmett has a few others in mind, since father does not have 12 sons that are alive or not asleep, then others are permitted to stand in for them. Also, Emmy and John have left Atlantis. We are unsure where they are at this time. Emmy met someone and has gone to be with him. Father granted her the allowance, however, John went with her, so you are standing in for John. We do not even know who she is over the cherry moon about. However, she seems to really love the guy. She met him at the Circle Den while visiting last year, or so she says. She refuses to say who he is. Danny shrugged. I wondered myself who Emmy was with, as she never spoke of anyone besides Emmett and his friend Law. A year's cycle to go, and we will have a new high priest, Paul said. Thanks be to the Lord it is not me, he laughed. You would have made it, Danny told him. Yes, I would, for I would have done it for the care of our people and the wish to guide them, and I would have made it back only because it had to be. I am not sure how strong my rule would have been, Paul said. Besides, Emmett loves Juanita. I would not feel right married to that child. Plus, as Scott, all my wives, besides Elizabeth and Penelope, would be centuries younger than me. Paul laughed. Really, my master, you are not that old, are you? Jolene asked him. I was transferred in the 5th century. Now what do you think? He asked, and Danny laughed. I looked up to Danny. When was you transferred? I asked him. The 9th century. 15th year. Danny told me, and I smiled. You are not that much before I said. He kissed me. No, I'm not. And neither's Tony. Paul is the oldest here. Danny laughed. When does the celebration take place? Tony asked. Father will announce national that Emmett is to climb the mountain at the first of the second cycle. Then the last month of that cycle, there will be a gathering of all kings and counts, and each week a celebration. Then the last week, there will be a millennium gathering, and the next day Emmett will leave. We will take him to the end of the kingdom's realm. Then Father and Emmett's personal guards will venture the rest of the way, Danny said. So who are those 3 that continue with him, do we know? Tony asked. Prince Lawrence, Count Cyrus, and Maverick, Paul said. Danny laughed. Emmett has the circle complete already, Danny asked. He thinks he does. You know how our little brother can be. All full of confidence, Paul replied. And as Prince Lawrence says, and shit, Danny laughed. Prince Lawrence was Emmett's best friend, Law. I sat listening. Then I decided I was bored with them and kissed Danny on the lips. I am going to sing, I said as I noticed the tavern filling. The graduation must have been over. I moved up on stage and started to sing. Everyone was excited about Emmett climbing the mountain, especially Juanita and Partina. I once heard Danny say that Emmett got whatever he wanted, and he wanted Juanita. It was funny, as it seems he was going to have her. Everyone teased Emmett, saying he best be careful that everyone knows the real reason he was climbing that mountain, and it was only so he could take Juanita as his wife. It was actually just in fun, for if that was so, Emmett would not return, and he had to climb the mountain for the care and guidance of the people of the garden. Emmett had said she would be his reward for a journey well done. Emmett really never spoke anything about the other daughters of the kings, as he had to have 7 wives. I was sitting on the bed reading a text about the millennium when Danny came in. I read that the high priest had to have at least 7 wives, and his first 7 had to be the daughters of the kings of the kingdoms, and he had to wed them in order. I looked up to Danny as he sat on the bed. "I have a question. May I ask it?" I asked. "Yes," he said, placing his arms around me. "This says the Millennium High Priest has to have 7 wives. Those 7 wives are to be taken in order of the kingdom and are to be the daughters of the kings. However, Emmett is married to Partina," I questioned. "Yes, he will have to take 6 more wives before the last of our father's rule," Danny said. "Right, that does not explain Partina, as this says the wives have to be of the kingdoms and the daughters of the king," I said. "That is more so a guideline. However, he has to wed in miracle order. When he returns, because he has Partina, the first kingdom is already taken. Therefore, his next wife will be Elizabeth, as she is the daughter of the king of Brenzel. Then, the next kingdom, he is to take a wife from Sidon. The king of Sidon has no daughters, so therefore he can take Juanita as his wife, so that is what he will do. Then the next kingdom is Xanadu, and that is Penelope. After Penelope is Calcan, and there are again no daughters. So Partina is his wife in this, so he need not take a wife from the kingdom. The next kingdoms are Rome and Argeton, who are Bethan and Pamela, I do believe," Danny said, and I looked at him with a laugh. "That is only 6, I laughed. "Yes, he will need to find a 7th one somewhere here in Atlantis. It makes it hard when the kings have no daughters, and the 2 of them do not," Danny said. "What if they had? What of Partina?" I asked. "It is the choice of the high priest to accept the daughter or not. It is not a decree that he has to take the daughter. He has to wed in the crest of the kingdoms and in order of the Sultan. All right, each high priestess represents a kingdom, as Partina is his first wife, so she also known as the high priestess, and she will represent Atlantis. Elizabeth will Brazil, as she will be second, and because of Partina, then Juanita will represent Sudan, as she will be wed in the order of that kingdom, and so on. Understand?" he asked. "I believe so," I smiled. This was a lot to learn, and they did not teach it in classes. The days did fly by, and soon it was the time for the celebration of the rotation of the millennium, and that is when things really went crazy in Atlantis. Chapter 46. It was the day of the celebration for the millennium. I and the others were performing at Valhalla. The night, as far as I knew, was going well. Everyone seemed to be having a good time. I say seems, for about halfway through the night, there was a crash, which startled all of us. I really was not too sure as to what was going on. I knew that someone had turned over one of the tables and everyone was gathered around. From a motion of Lewis, we started to play and sing again, and all was cleaned up. Mike had come up and they began to play. Danny had me to dance with him. What had happened? I asked him. Princess Penelope was having a good time, a little much of a good time. She was drunk. He is not the happiest, nor is my father, and I am certain she and her father will be even less happy once our father speaks to him in the morning. Danny had said. Everyone could not believe that Emmett was the one climbing the mountain, as he was the youngest of the high priest's sons. I was a little worried, as the stories were told of the first son of Lewis was found lifeless at the base of the mountain. That night, when we were at home, I was curious as to what they all spoke of. I was laying on the bed waiting on Danny. When he came in, he took a bath, then came to bed. What happened to your brother who climbed the mountain before? I asked him. From what all had said was that Jesse climbed the mountain under obligation. He did not want to guide the people, nor did he truly have any care for them. He never told Father this, as Scott had, and he started the quest. They are gone for 40 days. On the 41st day, Father had went to the mountain, for he had not returned, and there he found him at the base of the mountain. And the sector was once again in the chapel at Circled In. So Father did remain the high priest, Danny explained. I listened and thought of Peter. Why did your father refuse Peter? I asked. Because Peter is without the gift of life, or any abilities. He believes if he climbs the mountain, he will obtain Odin's gift. However, to even climb that mountain, you have to have a strong form of Odin's gift. If not, you will fail, and you'll fall back down the mountain. Peter would not even make it as far as Law did the day he was stuck on the mountain when Emmett climbed it to see what the Garden of Fruit looked like. Danny further explained, I thought back when they were youth and were on that mountain. What caused Law to be stuck? I asked. The gravity pull of the mountain, also that Law had no business on that mountain, as he does have a strong form of Odin's gift. He could keep his footing on the slant of the mountain. Now, why he was stuck as he was, I do not understand myself. If you remember, Cyrus had said the mountain was shocking him. I was not sure about that either, and Maverick said he kept sliding off it. Maverick has a form of Odin's gift. However, it does not exceed life. I know Cyrus has a strong form as Law does, so I do not understand when he said it was shocking and burning him. I had no problem running up it. Mike would not even attempt, and Scott was the chosen high priest, so that is why he could go up it with ease, and Emmett is very strong in his abilities, always has been. Danny then said, and I started kissing him, as I really was not understanding much, and one thing led to another. The celebration continues continued that following week. Everyone was happy and excited and worried all at the same time. I remained at Valhalla as Emmett and the others left out. He would be gone for 40 days. He left on the first day of the week, then starting the day after he would return, or should return, on the 40th day. Everyone was what you could say distracted. As he was gone, we had no concerts, and I performed at the tavern. Even the tavern was not as busy as it had been. I heard that those of the kingdom circles were posted at Odin's Mountain, as some people insisted on staying at the base, and it was not safe. I really was not sure why it was not safe. The Kingdom Square was not very busy either. It was as if everyone was waiting in their homes. I had asked Danny what was going on, and he said that a myth was that if the second son of the said high priest failed the mountain, then the cherry moon would explode. He laughed as he told me that, then said he guessed everyone was waiting for the explosion. They really had a lot of confidence in Emmett. Not Danny. Said he was not worried his little brother was stubborn enough to argue with even Odin himself. The day did come when Emmett returned. He was all dirty and even had a beard and mustache, and his hair was long. He looked to have been gone 40 years instead of 40 days. He had the scepter in hand, and everyone was even more excited, and for one was relieved he was home. And I for one was relieved he was home. The next day after his return, no one seen him at all. All Danny said his father and Emmett were in the sanctuary. The following day after that, he married Princess Elizabeth, and the following day after that, he married Juanita. Then it would be 4 passings of 3 years cycles before he would have to take another wife. Let me explain this a little, for I had to study it to figure it out myself. And Danny was so good answering my questions and assisting me to become unconfused, as the texts I read confused me. So, the Millennium High Priest had to have 7 weddings, also called the binding of the Sultan. Each wedding had to be conducted in the name of a crest of each kingdom. As Emmett's first wedding was already for Atlantis, crest, then he did not have to have another for 1 to 2 years passing. Then his next had to be the crest of Brazil, and as he was taking the daughter of Brazil, he had to wed Elizabeth, and so he did. Then the next wedding he had to be in the crest of Sudan, and since the king of Sudan had no daughters, he was able to wed Juanita. His next wedding would be in the crest of Xanadu, who was Princess Penelope, and he did not have to do that for 4 or 5 more years, from what I understood, and he was to have a wedding every 1 to 2 years until all 7 was achieved and before the 10th year of the rotation was complete. After Xanadu, his next would be in the crest of Kakan, then the next wedding in the crest of Rhone, and then the last in the crest of Dikion. This was to bring all kingdoms joined on the Sultan. Now the female he wed did not have to be from the kingdom crest, just agree to hold it in interest and care of the people there. That I am not really sure of. I do know that after Emmett married Juanita and Elizabeth, they started to have more children than any one person needed in a millennium of a lifetime. Danny had said that he had to have the children as they were the executive circle, and he had to have the circle filled as he had to have 7 wives. He had a good start already, as Partina was always with child. She had one each year cycle that I know of. Danny had made a comment that he knew for certain that 21 of the circle would be girls. There were 63 in a complete circle. I could not imagine having 21 children, more or less 63. All I could really say is Odin had to be behind all of that. 7 wives I could see in 10 years. However, 63 children in 10 years? I was so thankful Danny did not climb that mountain. I was having a hard time trying to tell him about one, more or less to tell him about 21 or 63. I was in the gathering last week. I had been feeling tired and weak, so I spoke with one of the clerics and found out I was with child. I asked for them not to tell Danny, as I wanted to. It was the 8th day of the first month of the second year cycle in 92. I was at Valhalla awaiting Danny to come into the gathering so we could work on the next recording disc. I sat there thinking of how to tell him. I wondered if he would be happy as I was.